One of the reasons why many potentially viable businesses do not start is because they are simply unable to gather the resources needed to get their idea off the ground. In order to start and grow, every business needs to acquire a range of resources, and these fall largely into the following categories. So the first thing we need to consider is financial resources. Economic resources represent the raw materials and the supply chain needed to produce and distribute goods in the business environment. And without adequate startup and ongoing financial resources, the business will simply not be viable. Next, we need to think about organisational resources, and in any business, the size of the company will determine the type of activities the manager performs in the business. For example, in a larger organisation, a production manager might direct team or group leaders who then oversee the scheduling and output of workers, whereas in a small company, the production manager might perform all of these activities themselves. Managers assess the performance of the department or company against the business's goals and plans, but it's very likely that in a small startup business, these resources will be provided almost exclusively by the owners, who may be supported by their network of contacts who may assist in the business on a casual part-time or unpaid business. This is very normal. The next area we need to think about is technological resource. Business technology allows business owners to improve their company's operations, and in any business, technology is likely to play an important part in the day-to-day operation of the business in areas such as manufacturing processes or alternatively e-commerce. Clearly, however, there may be challenges around the cost of implementing such technology and the skills and expertise needed to manage this technology. We also need to consider physical resources, and this relates to the tangible capital resources which will be used by the business over a longer period, such as equipment, plant machinery and buildings. Obtaining physical resources again has financial implications, and this can present real challenges to any new business. Lastly, we need to think about human resources. A small business manager needs to develop their own personal qualities that will be helpful in performing his or her work in the most efficient manner. However, they also need to source employees and develop them to create a positive work environment and a prosperous company.
So in this session, we'll look at how we can turn an idea into a viable business model which offers commercial opportunity. And the tool we'll be using for this is the Business Model Canvas. What is the Business Model Canvas? We'll take a look at the short video which provides a quick overview of what it is and what it's for.
So in terms of learning outcomes, here's what we're trying to achieve. By the end of this session, you should be able to provide a definition of business modelling, describe the various stages in the process of business modelling, and also use the Business Model Canvas to build a viable business model. Now, Kaplan and Warren in 2013 define a business model as a description of how your company intends to create value in the marketplace. It includes a unique combination of products, services, image and distribution that your business carries forward. It also includes the underlying organisation of people and the operational infrastructure that they use to accomplish their work. Now, from this we can say that a business model is essentially a framework which expresses the various key components of the business which combine to give the product offering, or what is often called the value proposition. We'll look at this in more detail later in the session when we come to use the business model canvas tool. And for this, you need a blank business model canvas and a stack of post-its. Now, even the most simple idea for a business, product or service can offer a variety of potential business models, each offering a different set of opportunities and challenges and ultimately benefits for the customer. So let's look at a basic example. Now consider this question: how many different models can we come up with to generate revenue from a lemonade stand? i.e., how can we structure the business to make money in a number of different ways? Now, the simple lemonade stall offers a range of possibilities for income generation, each leading to a very different business model. The relative attractiveness of each model is determined by the 3 M's: market demand, market size and structure, and margin analysis. We also need to make sure that the model chosen is appropriate to the circumstances. So first off, we could think in terms of per unit sales, and here the customer pays a set price for each unit they purchase, and an example of this would be an ordinary street vendor. Alternatively though, we could rent out a complete service where a single customer hires the stall and equipment and operates it themselves. An example of this would be a music festival pop-up stand. But you could also use a rental model where the customer rents a stall for a specific period of time and gets you to operate it, and they're able to consume as much product as they like. And an example of this would be a children's party. Another possibility would involve the customer paying for permission to operate the stall under your established brand, and this is clearly a franchise model. And finally, the customer could pay a monthly fee and consume as much as they like, whenever they like, using a subscription model. An example of this would be a membership scheme. So these are just some examples of how you can be innovative with even the most basic of business models. You can think of the business model canvas as a one-page business plan that explains what you want to do and how you intend to go about doing it. Once complete, it's very easy to expand this into a full business plan which you can use to lever in the resources you need to start and grow the business. In the same way that most people do not spend enough time at the idea generation stage, it's also fair to say that most do not spend enough time in the business model either, and instead they tend to go straight to writing a business plan or even just starting the business without a plan. This is a major mistake, as a strong business model is the foundation of a successful business. So how do we develop a business model? We'll take a look at this short video which explains how to use the business model canvas.
The main thing to think about with the business model canvas is that it's very sophisticated, and what it allows us to do is build a business model for pretty much any sector for a new or existing business, whether it be a coffee shop or something that's involved in the service sector like a leisure centre, or if we're actually starting to maybe look at an existing business, perhaps in the retail sector, that we're looking to develop, expand, grow, or perhaps launch new products with. So in summary, what we need to think about for the business model canvas is that how do all the 9 components come together, and from that, what's our unique selling proposition or our product offering. Even the simplest idea for a business, product or service can offer a variety of potential business models, each offering a different set of opportunities and challenges that ultimately benefits the customer. So let's take the example of a coffee shop. Whilst a key component of the offering is clearly the coffee itself, we must also consider other aspects which are part of the experience, such as the ambience within the shop, the attitude of the staff, and the convenience of the location. This is by no means a definitive list, but illustrates the idea of the offering or the value proposition. Now, the business model canvas has 9 key topics to consider when exploring different business models, and the key questions to consider when building a business model are: who are our customers? How do we segment these customers? What are the most valuable customers to us? And how do we contribute to the value proposition? We also need to think about the needs for each subgroup of customers and how we relate to these selected customers, or in other words, what type of relationship do we need to build with them? We also need to ask, how do we reach these customers? Will it be face-to-face, online, or a combination of these channels? And next we need to think about what key resources we need to perform our activities. These could be human, intellectual, financial, or physical. We also need to know who our key partners are in the supply chain, why we need them and why they need us. We then need to think about what the key activities of the business are, i.e. how does it actually operate. And lastly, we need to know what the major costs for activities are and how we make money from the business. Actually using the business model canvas really couldn't be simpler. All you need is a blank business model canvas template and a stack of post-its. If you intend to apply the business model to an existing business, then you need to do a little research first in order to get a better understanding of how the business actually operates. To achieve this, you can carry out some secondary research online, or if you have the opportunity, then consider undertaking some primary research, actually speaking to some people about the business. Once we've gathered the basic information, it's really just a case of populating the business model canvas and talking it through. I suggest you start with customer segments and work out from there. And don't worry too much if you're jumping back and forward from one section to another, as that's perfectly normal. So in practical terms, to use the business model canvas, it's really just a matter of carrying out some basic market research, talking your ideas through with the rest of your group before noting down the key decisions on a post-it note and then placing this in the relevant section of the business model canvas. Using post-its allows us to move things around or remove elements altogether if we decide for any reason to change the model. Now, a key part of any business model are the financial elements, and in the business model canvas, these fall under the categories of revenue streams and cost structure. And this is where many people struggle, as it can be very difficult to gather good financial information to help you populate these sections. But as you'll see in a moment, you can solve this through good market research.
The business model canvas has a number of different variants designed to do different things, and for our purposes we'll be using the triad version, which is sometimes also referred to as the criteria for success triad. As you can see, this version has the same 9 key components as every other version, but it groups them into 3 key success factors of desirability, feasibility and viability, and we need to balance these elements if we're to deliver something of value. Using the triad template allows us to identify early on in the process which of the key areas we need to develop. Now, any business model should be viewed as a work in process and as a cycle which is continuous. The key elements of this cycle are as follows. Firstly, regardless how much you think you know about your business, you need to learn. Be open to new ideas, conduct research, speak to a diverse range of people to help you firm up your idea. Ideas can be new, but generally they build on an idea or technology that already exists, so look hard at similar models in order to establish what are the common and critical success factors. From this, you can then think about how you can do it better. Next, you need to experiment and apply what you've learned from your research to your idea. This will allow you to test your theories and build a stronger business model. You should always start this process early so that you can fail early, and you should only risk what you can afford to lose in this part of the process. Next, you need to plan, and here you should reflect on the learning and experimentation process and plan what you are going to do next. And this is where you will start to build a strong business model. And lastly, you need to reshape by adapting and modifying your model based on what you've learned so far. By applying this process and taking measured risks, the entrepreneur has a much greater chance of building a viable and ultimately successful business model. So that's the theory, but what does it look like in practice? So now you need to make some key assumptions about what is realistic and achievable in terms of sales projections, break even and average customer spend. So consider this question: if a new restaurant from a standing start needs 1,000 customers each month to break even, is this realistic and achievable? Now, as ever, there's no right or wrong answer here, but clearly if that restaurant was located in a quiet suburb, then the figure seems quite high, whereas if the business was in the heart of a busy city, then it could easily be achievable. After all, it's roughly 250 people a week, and you could argue that a good city centre restaurant could possibly serve that many customers in a weekend, or possibly even a single day. At the end of the day, it comes down to what seems reasonable, and researching the local market and your direct competitors will provide additional information which can support your key assumptions and your financial projections. So if we continue with the example of the new restaurant, then we can also think about profit. Now, it's very common for businesses to make a loss in their first year of trading, and this is generally due to the investment they make at the start of the business in things such as equipment, stock and vehicles. And we also need to remember that it normally takes time to build up sales and for the business to become established. So in the case of the restaurant, it would be quite likely that this business would make a loss in its first year of trading, and this would be fine as long as it doesn't run out of cash. Another key assumption we need to make is to estimate our average customer spend. This is the average amount that an average customer might be expected to pay in total to your business in a single transaction. The process we'll go through to arrive at a logical value for customer spend is as follows. So first, let's take the example of a coffee shop in London. The average spend here might be somewhere between £3 and £6. This is the range that most customers will fall within. £3 would probably buy a latte, while £6 might buy a latte and a sandwich. Remember, this is a theoretical example and the prices don't really matter here. Within that range, we need to think about what the average spend might be. Clearly, we could expect to sell a lot of coffees at £3 in London, but probably less sandwiches as not every customer will want one. In this example, taking account of the expected volumes of each type of purchase, we could reasonably suggest that the average customer spend might be £5. At the end of the day, we're making a judgment, and what's important is that you're able to support that judgment either with evidence or with reasonable and logical assumptions that other people will agree with. A good starting point here is to simply look at your competitors' pricing and work out the range and average spend from that. Again, you must ensure that it's a like-for-like comparison when you're researching your competitors. Now, you may feel that you don't need to do much research, but this is a key phase of the business venture process and you need to take it seriously. But what research should you carry out in regards to the market? Well, here you should think about the following questions. Firstly, what is the demand for your product or service? For example, is the demand growing or shrinking, and how will you ensure you get a share of the market? Next, is this demand affected by general economic trends such as rising inflation or high unemployment? And if so, how do you plan to deal with this? Also, you need to consider how might customer requirements and buying behaviour change in the future, and what steps can you take to future-proof your business. You also need to be aware of any new products in the pipeline that can make yours look outdated, and think from this about how your product might need to develop to counter this. Similarly, you need to consider how your competitors are changing. For example, are they growing rapidly? Are they adopting new technology? Or are they entering new markets? And again, you need to think about how you will respond to these challenges. You also need to know what your competitors are offering and what price they are charging. And also you need to understand how your competitors advertise and promote themselves. And lastly, you need to be aware of any forthcoming legislation which could affect your place in the market. So how do we find the answers to these questions? Well, before undertaking time-consuming and potentially expensive primary research, you should look for existing data. Now, the UK has a vast amount of data collected by government, trade organisations and private sector companies, which is generally freely available online or via library. Once you've looked at existing source of information, you can then think about what the key themes are and how you would conduct some primary research of your own. For example, carrying out interviews with a small number of people or conducting surveys to gain feedback from larger numbers. Surveying large numbers of people will show you the broad trends, for example, what they do and when they do it, but it won't tell you why they do it. To get the answer to that question, you need to speak to smaller numbers of people in more depth. But in either case, you need to think very hard about what information you actually want to gather from your sample. So take some time to consider the questions you will ask your sample, and also whether the best way to obtain the data you're looking for to support your business case is to contact large numbers of people or to interview smaller numbers. Lastly, you need to think about who are the best people to contact in order to get the best results for your market research. Any research must be set in context, i.e. there must be an identifiable rationale for the questions you're asking. You must have researched your product and market first.
So now look at these two examples of the business model canvas in practice, using two very well known examples of very successful businesses that no doubt you'll have heard of. So this exercise is designed to provide an opportunity to explore the nature of business models using a real world example. And here we'll be looking at the case of former Scottish Butcher of the Year, Paul Conway. Now, entrepreneurs like Paul are particularly orientated to take opportunity from the market and create new products which deliver what the customer wants. So watch the short video clip and read the journal article on Paul's Quality Butchers. And here I want you to think about two things. Firstly, how did this real entrepreneur build a successful business using the 9 blocks of the business model canvas, namely value proposition, key activities, key resources, cost structure, key partners, customer relationships, customer segments, channels and revenue streams. And secondly, what evidence can you see of enterprising qualities, traits, attributes or behaviours which Paul has used in order to build a sustainable and successful business?